Welcome to 15 with Christine. This week, we welcome Jessica Miller, Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association, the chapter here in Alabama. So let's get started. On 15 with Christine, we talk about all things business growth. But before we dive in, I want to let you know where you can find the broadcast. I'll come to you live on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube. Hit the subscribe button and you won't miss an episode. My goal with 15 with Christine is to introduce you to people who can help you grow your business, help you grow your career. And I'm looking forward to the conversation today with Jessica Miller, Executive Director of the Alzheimer's Association. She has been a client of mine, is a friend of mine, and so glad, Jessica, that we're having this conversation. Welcome.
Thank you, Christine. I'm excited to be here.
Jessica, I know that, I've had the opportunity to learn a lot about you, but those listening probably haven't. Would love to ask you first, what brought you to the Alzheimer's Association? How would you describe the story of, your journey here and your journey to leading this team?
Absolutely. So I spent the majority of my career in radio sales. I started out, did a little stint in nonprofit for about 2 years. And then from that stint in nonprofit, just built a lot of connections with folks in the local media. And so I transitioned over to a sales rep. And then eventually moved to the Nashville area, spent the majority of my career there in radio sales with Cumulus Radio, had a lot of success, but and I loved my time in radio sales, but got to the point where I was just looking for something a little bit more fulfilling. And something that gave me a little bit more purpose. And so my family and I moved back to the Birmingham area about 4 years ago, which is when I started looking into nonprofits, and specifically the Alzheimer's Association was a very impactful organization for me personally, because my grandfather had dementia. My great uncle passed from Alzheimer's. And so the mission of the organization was very close to my heart. And so this organization gives me the opportunity to take my sales background and apply it in a way that benefits our community and benefits the people that we serve.
Jessica, when you look back at your, the personal connection from your family, what resonated most with you as you were looking at joining the Alzheimer's Association to lead this chapter? From a specific level, when you look at the members of your family who were dealing with dementia, dealing with Alzheimer's, what would it have meant to you and your family to have the support of the Alzheimer's Association in that journey?
Well, I will say from personal experience, we lived in a very rural part of Alabama. And my family had no idea that there were even resources like the Alzheimer's Association around. We didn't know those things existed. And we really didn't realize, especially with my grandfather, that dementia had any connection to Alzheimer's. I think a lot of people, they hear dementia, or their doctor may say, oh, they have a touch of dementia. And they think it's part of the aging process, which is what my family thought. But my grandfather was, in his 60s, 70s, which is very early to show signs of dementia. And so I think the big thing for me that resonates on a personal level is the awareness that we're able to raise across the state. We have a small but mighty staff here. Most of us are located in Birmingham, but we do have staff in Montgomery and Huntsville as well. And one of the main focuses of our team is to reach out, to broaden our reach across the state, and really to reach those rural populations that don't have those local programs and services.
That's so valuable. I'm curious, when you work with businesses, I know that there's a lot of resources you provide to, to their employees so that they can really provide for their family in that caregiving role. And it's would love to hear how that's powerful because you have firsthand experience with that. But when it comes to everything from dementia, and I'm a little bit familiar with Lewy body dementia, I have friends who have dealt with that, as well as with Alzheimer's. When it comes to the standpoint of supporting people who are coming to work every day, probably raising their children as well as taking care of their elderly family members, whether that's a grandparent, a parent, an aunt, an uncle, or someone they care about, what can your organization do to really provide boots on the ground help?
That's a great question, Christine. And I think a lot of people are unfamiliar with all of the ins and outs of our organizations and what we do provide. But some of the main things that we can do for a company is bridge that gap with their HR department.
Yes.
Most HR departments have, maybe an employee assistance program or things like that, resources internally for their employees. But with people who are caregiving for someone with Alzheimer's or another form of dementia, there's a lot of special scenarios that they go through and specific needs that they have. And so what we can do is not only be, our chapter be a resource. We work with UAB, with care consultations. We also have a 24-hour helpline. So if one of their local resources, maybe if you're here in Birmingham, if that's UAB, or if it's one of your local area agencies on aging, we know that those care counselors get, they have a long waiting list sometimes, and people can't get in quickly. And so we have a 24-hour helpline that connects people with master's level clinicians.
Yes.
Anytime, day or night, to one, help them with learning about the disease process if they have a newly diagnosed family member.
Yes.
They can also help them plan for future. Here are the things to expect. Here are the things that you're going to have to think about caring for, even down to, legal and financial tips. And so, we find that a lot of the employees nowadays are kind of how you explained. They're in what we call the sandwich generation.
Yes.
They're caregiving for a loved one with Alzheimer's or dementia, and they also have children at home. And so that presents a whole nother set of problems and stress. And so we also offer support groups for people who are caregiving, so they have a safe space to go to and talk with others who are going through the same things they're going through. And it's very specific to those needs.
Yeah, okay. I have really two kind of additional questions to break this down a little further, particularly for anyone who's listening. So, for example, if someone, in Anniston or outside of Tuscaloosa or in a smaller town in Alabama is dealing with a new Alzheimer's diagnosis, can they access all of these resources?
Absolutely.
Okay.
That's the great thing about our organizations. We have a lot of online resources.
Yes.
We have a ALZ Connected, which is an online support group. We also do virtual support groups if they don't have one locally in their area.
But that was my next question.
Yes.
How does that work, Jessica, as far as how are those groups put together and how do people find one?
So really, those are volunteer driven. So our organization, we are constantly in our programs and services department recruiting new volunteers in specific areas. So what we do is we go into these communities and we partner with maybe a company or a local organization, maybe the Chamber of Commerce, and we do a community forum, and we figure out what the needs are in that specific community. And so, say if someone in a more rural community, I'm from Laverne, Alabama, so I'll use good old Laverne as an example. If someone in Laverne, Alabama saw a need, they could reach out to our chapter, and we could come in and partner with another organization and do a community forum, assess the need that's there, find out where the gaps are, and then we can start working with those people in that community to set up. We train our volunteers, our community, we have community educators, support group leaders, and all of those people are trained and certified through our organization.
So is the first step just your organization knowing where that help is needed.
Exactly.
And do you mind if I ask? I'm not familiar enough with Laverne to know if there is a chamber of commerce, or if, based on the size of the community, what type of organizations do you reach out to put together those community resources?
Absolutely. There is a Chamber of Commerce there, but for those communities that may not have their own Chamber of Commerce, faith-based organizations are a great resource. We reach out to a lot of the local churches
Yes.
because those are the people who are boots on the ground serving that community.
Yes.
And so we may partner with a few local churches and bring in the entire community. The big thing is we want representation of the entire population. So, anything from a specific type of work that people do there, or, a specific race, gender, whatever that population is made up of. We want to have that representation there so we know what each part of that community needs.
So, Jessica, I know you have your longest day event coming up June 21st. You are planning for your Alzheimer's Walk, which I know is one of your biggest events of the year. That's going to be on October 30th. If someone is a business owner or an executive listening, and they may be thinking, we have team members I know who are dealing with this, who are dealing with family members, and walking through getting them the right medical care, getting them support, dealing with being a caregiver and all those demands that happen when you're taking care of children, taking care of parents. For those type of business owners or executives or HR leaders, can you share some stories of other organizations you've worked with and how you've helped them with their employees? Because I know there's many, here in Birmingham, here in Pelham, as well as throughout the state.
Absolutely. So one of the great things about our fundraising events is, that's how we do the work that we do in our state.
Okay.
So 79% of all the funds that we raise go back to research as well as local care and support. So those, that helpline that I talked about, or those online resources, or the resources we have to train community educators, that's how we provide those things in our community. If a company wanted to get involved and be able to, benefit their community in this specific way and reach, advocate for better resources in their community, this is a great way to get started, is being involved in some of our local events, whether it's through sponsorship or starting a company team and engaging your employees in fundraising opportunities. And, we do fun things like, internal competitions, and we provide incentive prizes and make it a really exciting, fun thing. But I think, one of the most inspiring events that we have, at least from my personal experience, is our Walk to End Alzheimer's events.
Yes.
Those happen across our state in the fall of the year, and we call it our largest support group of the year because it brings everybody in that community together. And we have a big ceremony where people are holding flowers representing why they're there walking. So if it's a blue flower, that person is living with Alzheimer's disease or another dementia. If it's a purple flower, they've lost someone to Alzheimer's. If it's yellow, they're caregiving. And so it brings all of these different people, and you get to really see your community and why they're there, why they're involved, and why they're fighting, for a cure for this disease. So it's a really inspiring event. I would encourage anyone to get involved and be involved in that way. I'm not really, I can't really pinpoint, a specific company because there are so many that are involved in our organization. But I'd say that's probably the first step into getting involved in our organization. Most of the time, I feel like most people know us for our fundraising events. And then from there, the great thing about that is we can not only get people excited about fundraising, but we also come in and do lunch and learns. And we talk about, okay, this is what you're fundraising for. This is what the funds go towards. Here are the resources that we can offer you, the employees, as an organization, but this is also how those resources are provided for in our community.
So, Jessica, what is the best way for people to learn more about what you do. We have your contact information here. We have the website for the Alabama chapter of the Alzheimer's Association here, www.alz.org/AL. But I know I follow you on Facebook, and I see so much about the resources there. So is that also a great resource?
It is a great resource. So our social media pages, we do a lot of promotion about especially on the education programs.
Yes.
Every education program that we host, whether it's virtual or in person, we're promoting it on our social media. We're also doing via eBlast. So if you follow us at EndAllsAL on Facebook, LinkedIn, or Twitter, you can find so many resources that way. But then, the big thing I would say for companies or individuals, reach out to me personally and let's schedule a lunch and learn. I'd love to talk to your employees or your leadership team about the resources that we can provide to you as a company. And then also, how you can support the community locally and those living with Alzheimer's disease.
Yeah. Well, Jessica, thanks so much for dropping in to share about this. And thank you to everyone who's watching or listening. And if you know someone who is caring for someone with Alzheimer's or dementia, feel free to share this podcast. And especially if they're outside the Birmingham area, or maybe if they're in a city where they may not know about the resources that are available. Help us get the word out. Jessica, thanks for joining us. We will be back again in 2 weeks with another episode of 15 with Christine. So until next time.